Welcome to the Revel Fitness Podcast, episode number 2. Okay, what is today's topic?
Today's topic is forgiveness.
And what is forgiveness?
Forgiveness is, as I understand it,
I'm actually asking that. What is forgiveness? Because I don't know what you think forgiveness is, and I have a vague understanding of what I think forgiveness is.
Okay. Sometimes it's easier to say first what it's not, because a lot of what I used to think was forgiving turned out that it really was. I wasn't forgiving at all. All I was doing was
Forgetting?
no, not even forgetting, but saying, "You're wrong. I'm right. What you did was bad, or what you thought was bad, but I'm so noble. I'm so magnanimous that I'm going to let it go." That is not forgiveness. Forgiveness, I think, is when you really realize that no one does anything purposely evil to be evil. There are things that cause that behavior, but in the big scheme of things, it doesn't matter. People are human beings, and we're never going to be our ideal person. And no one's going to be the ideal person. No one's going to be perfect. So when someone does something that upsets you, first you have to look to see why that upset you. Really, was it really what they did, or is it your reaction to it, which I find is almost always the case. And it's almost always the case that there is something that has happened in my past that I didn't forgive, some wound that got opened by this person's behavior or their words, and it really had nothing to do with that particular moment. It was just them. But forgiveness is not only saying, I forgive you for what you did, that it was bad. It's that no one does anything wrong. I mean,
okay,
yeah.
So let me play devil's advocate here, because I know this is what I think and what probably a lot of other people think. When somebody has done something to you that takes away something from you, say somebody cheats you out of money, how do you forgive and still do something about it at the same time?
Yeah, that's the hard thing. And that is something you have to cultivate over time. It's that you deal with the thing, not the person. Like it used to be a real cliche that you would say if you're raising kids, you'd say, "I still love you. I do not like your behavior." You don't have to agree that what someone does was the right thing to do, and it doesn't mean that you should do something about it. But to harbor ill feelings towards that person because they did it does nothing for anybody. It doesn't make them feel bad because they did it. They don't care, and they don't know what's going on in your head. But it eats at you as the person who is harboring or holding a grudge for something that someone did, whether you corrected it or not. It's still in the back. It eats away at you. There's a nice line in Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. And he says, can you imagine that, two ducks are swimming towards each other in a lake, and they bump into each other and they ruffle their feathers and blah, 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 blah. And then they settle whatever it is and they move on their own way. The rest of the day, those ducks are not going, "Can you believe what that duck did? He was like messing around with me, blah, blah, blah." But as human beings, we replay that over and over again. And it might very well be that the other duck really did forget and you didn't. So you're the only one who's suffering by holding on to that.
Yeah, and I found for myself the only way to move beyond that and to not think about it all the time is there's Anthony DeMello. He wrote a book and he said, you should be so busy improving your own life and enjoying your own life that you do not have time to either worry about what other people are doing or to worry about and to hold all these grudges that you have towards other people. So in that instance, if I were the duck, for me, just my personality in general, I would play it over in my head a billion times, and the only way to get over it is to say, okay, I'm going to focus on something else really hard. and like I'm going to do this. I'm going to go write some music, or I'm going to go learn a new dance or something. Learning is like the best way because it occupies so much of your brain that your brain just doesn't have the time or the energy to think about all that other stuff. That's kind of a just quick side note.
And I think that's a very good initial way to deal with that.
Well, that brings me to my next question is like, yes, I understand on an intellectual level what you're saying. Like, yes, you can get over it and be like immediately like, oh, they didn't even do anything wrong. They're just being them. I'm going to deal with it how I have to deal with it, but I'm not going to actually emotionally involve myself in this and have this reaction that is unnecessary. But how do you make that actually happen? Because a lot of the process of that is automatic, that you're just mad right away, and your brain's going to do what it's going to do.
Yeah, because that's how you've been programmed. We've been programmed to have an automatic response and to be mad. I mean, that's how we come out.
Genetic program or social programming or both?
No, I think it's both. And the better rearing you have, the more easily you get past that. But in general, because our bodies, our reptile brain wants to protect us when things happen. The first inclination is to be defensive or to assume everything out there is bad. It's our rational brain that allows us to, or our mammalian brain that allows us to make a connection with someone, and then it's our rational brain that allows us to go, okay, now this is a safe situation. I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to react in a negative way. Now, when someone does something to you that really hurts you, it's really hard to go, okay, I'm still in a safe situation. This person that I loved or trusted or didn't know very well at all or didn't know at all hurt me. How do I get past that in a real way besides just occupying my brain? That will help get you through the initial adrenaline, cortisol, all of that stuff. It'll let it process through your body and it'll keep your mind occupied. But once your mind comes to rest, that unresolved problem, that bad, quote, bad thing that you thought happened or that did happen that you thought was bad, is still going to play over and over in your mind until you get to the point where you can step back in a calm way and look at it and go, first of all, is what I think happened, is that really what happened? Because sometimes we're upset over something that didn't even happen. We just don't know all the facts and we made up a story.
That, in my experience, that doesn't happen to me too often, but go ahead.
Okay. It does happen. I have a good example of that where someone was at a party, a particular person didn't pay attention to them or, kind of ignored them. They spoke with someone else who said, oh, that's because you're not one of the big wigs at this company function. It turns out that that person that didn't talk to the original person thought that he was, I should just use some names.
Who's on first?
Who's on first? Let me rephrase this. Okay, so that's really horrible. Unless you know names, it's really hard to say.
Well,
so
I got it more or less.
Wish I hadn't used that example. In any event, so sometimes that's the case. Sometimes though, you forget that all of our experiences, at least this is my opinion, this is how I live my life, all of our experiences are part of our reality. And reality isn't a mistake. It is what happened. So I choose to find what is it in each of those negative experiences that is the lesson I'm supposed to learn, or the lesson that the other person's supposed to learn, or there's some stepping stone that this is in my life. That if I can figure out what that is, or even just get it in my mind, you know what, I can't figure out what it is right now, but I know this happened for a reason. So rather than condemn that person, you're a piece of crap because you do this thing, or you're an evil person, or you're a bad person, or you are not a person that I want to be associated with because you did or said this thing. Instead, I can look at that and go, underneath whatever is going on with you, there is a real human being in there with real love, a real need to connect. And same way with me. I've made many mistakes. You could be mad at me for something I don't even know about. Or maybe I caused you to react that way because I touched some old wound of yours. So I instead choose to find what's good in you, forgive that thing if I need to deal with it. For instance, it's that you took my money. I'm going to say, in whatever safe way I can, you can't treat me that way. I want my money back. Some things are instances that you can't undo.
So basically, your idea of forgiveness is not what other people's, because like that's the problem, I think, when you talk about forgiveness, is that's what I get caught up on anyway, is that is not the concept of forgiveness that most people use. Forgiveness is just like what you said at the beginning, what most people think of it as is you've done something wrong, I'm going to forgive it, and like you still did something wrong,
Yeah.
but I'm going to like say that's cool, don't worry about it.
But in truth, it isn't cool because you still feel like they did you wrong. When I say forgiveness, I mean you have to get it in your mind. You have to give ahead of time the assumption that there is nothing wrong in what they did. It is them being them, you being you, and then you move on. Not I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm going to grant you this forgiveness. Because if you say that to someone, they will take it to heart. They'll write it off. They don't feel bad about it anymore. You, on the other hand, haven't actually forgiven them, so you still feel like crap. Mm-hmm. And it eats at you forever until you work through it to understand that no one in their right mind, if we were perfectly rested, perfectly nourished, perfectly adjusted, had no trauma in our lives, no put downs, no anything. We were just raised in a perfectly loving world. No one would ever do anything mean or evil to someone else. It just wouldn't happen. It's the whole package of our lives causes our brains and our emotions to go awry. So when you can think of that, literally every time someone does something wrong, they've kind of lost their minds. And if you can look at it that way, that underneath we are exactly the same. We're all looking for a way to be acknowledged and recognized and connected with other people. We're relationship-driven beings. So knowing that that's the fundamental urge of human beings, it doesn't make any sense to do anything wrong to anybody else. Something has to be misfiring up there. So forgiveness is recognizing that no one does anything wrong on purpose.
Right, but you still have to make a judgment call that you don't like what they did.
That is correct. That is your preference. That is your interpretation of the world given your humanity, your rested, your nourishment, your upbringing, your experiences. That is a wrong thing to you. Someone else in the world might look at that same thing and go, yeah, whatever. It may or may not make any difference. If it's not something that upsets everybody in the world the moment that it happens, it is our reaction to it.
I've always gotten caught up on this because you take this to the extreme. Mm-hmm. Somebody gets murdered. Other people aren't upset by it because they don't even know that it's happened. Mm-hmm. But if somebody knows that it's happened, isn't it pretty universal that they're going to be upset by it?
Is it?
Yes.
Well, I don't know. But I'm sure that there are people that when someone else dies, it doesn't have an impact on them at all.
Right, but death is different from murder.
Okay. From murder?
Yeah, you could use the Hitler example, say a lot of people were happy.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's great. But I just mean I don't, so for me, at least, I mean, I'm no expert on this, but for me, the path towards forgiveness does not lie in saying that what they did wasn't bad. Because especially if you need to forgive something at all, well, I guess this is the whole definition of forgive that it gets caught up on. If there's something, I guess what you're trying to say is there's nothing to forgive in the first place.
That is exactly what I'm trying to say. Yeah. What I'm trying to say important. Is that so many of the philosophies of life and so many of them, they all say something like, Don't judge other people, because you're just judging yourself when you do. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Forgiveness is the basis of many, many, many philosophies and religions. But it has to be that it is just like in our criminal justice system. We don't put people in jail who were, quote, insane, even though they might have murdered somebody. We put them someplace to try to help them, supposedly, although I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. But that's our justification. But seriously, who would murder someone if they were sane?
That's what I always say too. People are like, "Oh yeah, if you're an alcoholic, you gotta pull yourself up." Like, who chooses to have a crappy alcoholic life? Like,
yeah,
personal responsibility only goes so far, okay? Because at some point you're like, you cannot make good decisions for yourself. That's just clear, and it's not your fault, or it is your fault, whatever. But at this point, you can't just say, "Oh," I mean, you kind of have to do that in lots of situations where you say, "Okay, you got to live your life. I cannot help you." But that's a quick aside.
Yeah. No, but that's my point is, anytime someone behaves in what we consider a bad way, if it's not a loving, kind act, if it's not an act of love or an act of kindness that someone has done, and this is my belief, my philosophy, it's how I feel good about the world that I live in, and how I go from thing to thing. I think we all want to love and be connected. When someone just keeps saying the same things over again, they're, doing things, they're really just trying to connect because they're alone. None of us really want to be alone. Very few people could be hermits. It's not one of the, if you watch any of the shows now that talk about solitary confinement and what happens to a human being when you keep them from other human beings for an extended period of time, it is really bad. You are damaging those people. It's not easy. So underneath it all, I believe we all just want to connect. When someone is doing something that deters that, I choose to understand or believe in my bones that is not a willful act. That is something gone awry. So I stop saying they're wrong and I'm right. I say, I forgive me for judging you. I forgive you for doing that, whatever it was that I'm judging you about, and let's move on.
That word I think there just needs to be a new word, because forgive no matter how you slice it, if you say forgive, that means something bad has happened. So it kind of has to be like, nothing bad happened in the first place. A word for that. Like, there was no crime committed in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like a mistake. Like, sin, the original meaning is to miss the mark.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's kind of what it is. It's like, as soon as somebody does something that you think is bad, then you've missed the mark on understanding what just happened.
Yes.
What just happened was whatever just happened. And then you get to decide whether it's something you want to happen in your life. And if it's not, then you just deal with it accordingly. But this whole notion of like condemning them for it.
And it's almost
that's
like
a waste of time.
Yes. There's forsake and forgive, which, and I know I'm going to botch this, but forsake is like abandoning. You give up on that person. Forgiving is giving them their humanity and saying, whatever you did, you're still a human. I'm a human. Let's deal with that reality of that. But let's not say you're a bad person. Let me not make it personal. You did this to me. Why could you do that to me? How could you possibly have done that to me? Mm-hmm. When literally all they did was do something. Yeah. It's not to you.
Right.
They did something. The fact that you think it's about you is as much or more about you than them at all. And they will move on to their other things, whatever they do next. And you say, well, they shouldn't have done that. Mm-hmm. Well, they did do it. That was reality. So if you say they shouldn't have done it, then you're saying then reality is wrong. How insane is it to disagree with reality?
Well, it's pretty insane, but I also feel like it's kind of a natural human tendency because you want to change things. Like, there's a lot about reality that we're like, this should not be, and let's change it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the point is, okay, I really wish you hadn't done that. I really wish it weren't that way. But maybe your having done it is to waken me up to what I can do to prevent this from happening again in my life or in anybody's life. Like, say someone hurts you really badly, it's a wake up call to you to like not go, that person's really bad. That does you no good at all. That person's a bad person. They shouldn't have done that. My life is ruined because they did this, they did that, blah, blah, blah. Instead, thank you for doing that because now my eyes are wide open to what reality is. And I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm not going to block my feelings off. I'm just going to be more aware when that happens or something similar happens, to not judge it automatically, to go, oh, you said the same word that person said, so apparently you're going to do the same things. No, but at least your eyes are open and you don't fall back into some bad pattern. Every quote negative thing, everything you interpret as negative is an opportunity for you to learn a lesson. And I personally believe that you will keep getting the same lesson over and over, and each time it will get worse until finally a ton of bricks is dropped on your head and you have no choice but to pay attention. I think the universe gives you plenty of opportunity to learn things in a non-painful way. But we often don't take that. We go, oh, that's not what I thought. That couldn't be that. Blah, blah, blah. Like food. Couldn't be the grains. Couldn't be all those
Couldn't
preservatives.
Be that pizza and donuts I had yesterday.
Yeah, it couldn't be that. Or no, they were so nice to me yesterday. This cannot be their real behavior. This cannot be how they are. And every day they do the same behavior in your relationship, and you do the mainstream forgive. You go, I'm so noble and I love you so much, I'm going to forgive you for treating me like a piece of crap. But you don't actually forgive them, nor do you learn from it. You just keep letting it happen.
Yeah, that wouldn't. Yeah, so that if you're not really forgiving if you keep letting it happen.
No.
Because you clearly don't like it. So you're not doing the full part of it, which is like deciding whether you want it in your life or not.
Yeah. Now, if you have some need in your life and you want that kind of thing to happen, then you just go right ahead and let it happen. But don't be mad at the other person because they're doing it. Yeah. That's not fair. You're playing their game. You're allowing them to treat you in a certain way, and you're being noble. I love you so much, I'm going to forgive you. And then underneath, you're raging with anger and hurt. And they're just continuing to do the same thing. They're being themselves, and they don't fit you for whatever reason. They do not fit you, but you stay and let it keep happening. You've never forgiven them, not one single time. You've just said the word forgive, but you didn't really know what it meant.
Right.
So for me, until I actually, and sometimes it takes longer than others. I'm not saying that I forgive, in an instant, but the change now and how quickly I can go from a reaction of hurt and go, okay, I'm hurt. What is this really about? It can't possibly be about that person. It can't. It has to be something inside me. It's my reaction to it.
Right.
Because.
Okay, well, let me just get to the crux, I think, of what the whole issue is. Is forgiveness is not about what the person did. It's about reframing your own reaction to it and having more control over your own situation when something that you don't like has happened, right?
Yes. Yeah, so it is saying to yourself, they were them. That's their reality. Okay, I can't control them. I can't have their thoughts for them. I can't take their actions for them. All I can do is have my own reaction to it, and I choose, as soon as I can get my brain wrapped around it in any specific instance, I choose to go, you're being you. My being upset over it was my reaction to it. It's my programming to think that you are doing that to me when you're just doing it. So then I can say, okay, I've forgiven that because I'm not thinking that you did something to me. I'm not thinking that you did something bad. I'm thinking that my reaction to that, based on my past experience, was negative. And now I can let that go because instead I can say, here's the lesson I need to be learning when that kind of thing happens to me. That's the gift that your behavior is going to give to me. So you didn't do anything wrong. You did your thing. I had a negative reaction to it. I'm learning to interpret my actions as my way of getting help for myself. So let's say, for instance, in my past life, I would let people control me. And then I would feel bad because I wasn't meeting their expectations. And now when someone says, I want to be everything to you, I want you to be my everything, in that, or you're special. That's the one that really disturbs me. When someone says I'm special, no, I'm just me. Don't put me up somewhere up here. And it gets me all riled up. That's their words. It doesn't rile me up anymore. It used to get me really worked up because I don't want to have to be special to anyone. I just want to be me. And sometimes me is clumsy and goofy and disorganized and not special at all. Pretty damned ordinary. And when someone says I'm special, to me, it's a way of trying to make me behave in a special way. And it feels like control. Now I have no idea what anyone who ever said that meant. But that is definitely how I thought it was before. Now it doesn't bother me at all. Because as soon as I hear that word, it works me up for a second, and then I go, wait a minute. You have no idea what's in their head, what they mean by that word.
Right.
So I can move on, but I can also keep my eyes and ears open for other controlling behaviors. And if they exhibit those, then I say, oh, you know what? I think this person might be trying to control me, so I'm going to be aware, and I'm not going to let that happen. I can be in relationship with them, whatever that relationship turns out to be, but I will not let someone control me. I will be my own person. And I can do that all without being angry, without being resentful, without harboring a grudge, without ever thinking about what they said in the first place again, unless I'm trying to bring it up for a discussion like this. But I do think you're right. Your fundamental statement that what we think is forgiving isn't forgiving at all. No, if you go back to the Christian religion, at least, and I'm certainly not an expert, but I did go to Sunday school. And the one thing that I remember from church and Sunday school is that God forgives you. When God forgives you, God doesn't care what you did. It is gone. God's not keeping a list somewhere, the good and the bad. God forgives you. So it's, once, if God has forgiven you, that thing you did is gone. It never existed. And that's what I aspire to, is that thing is gone. I've learned the lesson that I need to learn from it. Or maybe I will learn it again when I need to, because I might not have gotten it all the way. But I don't need to keep that resentment going. I don't need my cortisol levels going up every time I think about that issue.
No, I don't think you have to say what they did was not a bad thing, and you're suddenly not able to let go of all resentment and be like perfectly okay with it.
Have you done that yet?
In certain circumstances, yeah, for sure.
Really?
Yeah. It's like people do bad things, but like I don't harbor any resentment to them at all. Or I don't even care. Like I'm just like, oh, that's good for you, man. There's other instances where I have not been able to do that for sure. But like, because I just, that's the thing I keep getting hung up. You have to make a judgment call, right? Like, I mean, if you're not making a judgment, you won't even be able to react to it. You're not reacting to it. But then, like, why would you even do anything? Like, if you don't care. Because, like, I can get down with not holding any resentment. Somebody, like, steals my money, and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to resent that. But what you did was bad, and I'm going to get my money back. and I'm not mad at you or anything, but
I want my money back.
yeah. But there's still a judgment there, right? Because it's still...
Yes, but they're judgments about the thing. They are not judgments about the people.
yeah.
And I think that's the big difference. Forgiving a person, you don't have to forgive that act, but you forgive that person because all they did was do whatever their reality was. You can judge the act as a good or a bad thing. Do what you can to fix it. If you can't fix it, it's the serenity prayer.
Yeah.
The whole give me the courage, give me the strength, give me the wisdom, and to know the difference of what I can change and what I can't. But that's about judging acts. Forgiveness is about not judging people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well there you go. That makes a lot more sense.
At least that's how I understand forgiveness to be, is to stop judging people, stop taking what other people do or say personally against you. Because half the time you have no idea what they're talking about. You just don't know what they've said or what they're thinking in their minds. As a little aside, one of my ways of dealing with grumpy people, even in here in the studio or in my general life, if someone is impolite or curt or brusque or downright hostile to me, instead of what I used to do, which would be like, what did I do wrong? Oh my gosh, I don't know what I did. Blah, blah, blah.
That's not the common reaction. The common reaction is, man, can you believe it?
Yeah, but my reaction is always like, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Now my reaction is, have I done anything to cause this? Nope, it's not about me. So now what I can do is treat this person with as much love and kindness as I can possibly muster in the circumstance, and hopefully pull a fellow person out of whatever little pit they're in at that moment. Mm-hmm. Maybe a kind word from me, an understanding word from me, instead of an immediate hostile defensive reaction, will help them resolve whatever their issue is, or give them just enough connection with another human being that their day gets better. Mm-hmm. I don't take it as my obligation in life to make everybody else feel better, but I do believe that we all have an obligation, or opportunities, I should say, not obligation, but the opportunity to help other people live happier lives just by the way we react to them. I try to take nothing personally. If someone says something, unless I know, like if they say, Cindy, you are a piece of crap. when they say something, snippy or whatever, I have to think to myself, is that really anything at all to do with me? Or is it that they haven't eaten well, they haven't slept well, they've had a fight with a spouse, they don't have enough money to pay their rent, their car's out of gas, somebody's suing them, somebody's sick. There are a million reasons why someone can be in a foul mood that has nothing to do with her humanity. It has to do with their circumstances, and it definitely doesn't have anything to do with me.
I think, so I just thought of this, I'm not sure how related this is exactly to what you're just saying, but in general it's related, which is that I think a big part of one thing that I've been missing is that a big hurdle to we gotta have a different word. I think just my reaction to what people do. Like the big step that I've been missing is stop putting myself in the situation where what's bothering me can keep happening. Like if I don't like it, it's really like you have to say something or just get over it. Whichever one you want to pick. Every single time it's I have to say something or it's going to eat me from the inside out. And like I'm just hitting that right now, but that's what it is. It's like that you have to have the final step of doing your part of it, which is that are you going to keep or do you want this in your life or not? Like whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Like instead just harboring resentment towards the person.
Yeah.
And not
and saying the words I forgive you and I'm going to move on and we're going to have a happy relationship, when it keeps happening, at some point You are the driver of your life. You come to the fork in the road. This road is the same thing over and over again.
Right.
And you're going to say something about it. It's going to be acknowledged. You're not going to feel any better. It's going to keep happening. So at some point you have to go, either everything that else that is down this road is good enough for me to take this part that I really hate.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to go this other path that is not even going to put me in the circumstances where I can be treated that way or I can experience those things. And but then I also have to give up the other things that go along with it.
Right.
And that's the difficult thing is, at different points in your life, different things are more important than others.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like it's easy enough to talk about things like money. Like somebody steals your money, of course, yeah, you just try to get the money back. Somebody stabs you, you're like, okay, of course, you try to not get stabbed and whatever. But in murkier things, like especially relationships, there's good parts about it and there's bad parts about it. And then you just have to figure out, are those bad parts fixable or not fixable? And part of forgiving, or just part of your reaction to whatever happens, is you have to do the final step, like, or just, I guess, yeah. You have to do the final step of like doing your part of it, which is adjusting to whatever just happened, instead of just doing the exact same thing and being like, why did they do that? I wish I wouldn't do that again. Oh, well.
But oftentimes it takes having multiple conversations like what we're having here today. I know that you and I have talked about these things before, and I'm sure you've talked about it with other people, but it takes, like anything else that you learn, you have to build some fertile soil first with a lot of crap that goes in and get compost. And then suddenly the germ of what is the solution to your life sprouts.
Well, I was just thinking, I just kind of like doing the same things over and over again, just as a general rule. Like the things I like to do, I like doing them over and over again.
Well, that's true.
And the things that I like music I like to listen to, I listen to the same music all the time. So a lot of times what happens is if it's something I like and it's more or less what I like, then I'll just like, well, I'll just keep going with this. And I think that's just, I don't think it's human nature, but I think it's a part of human nature. I think it's a tendency we can have, which is just, I'm going to keep doing this.
Well, and one of the hardest things I believe in the world that you can do is terminate a relationship with someone. Whether it's, a romantic relationship, whether it's a familial relationship, or even just a friendship, or even, your hairdresser. I mean, it's hard to break.
Yeah, that's true.
It's hard to break relationships.
Things, yeah.
Because we have connected on some level with someone, and since that's our fundamental urge is to connect with people, breaking one is just so counterintuitive and counter-human that it's very difficult to do. Even if you are in an unhealthy relationship that is causing you more pain than pleasure, you're getting much more cost than benefit out of it. It's hard to go, I can survive without this. That person can survive without it. But the people that you are in a relationship depend on you. Your hairdresser, you're her income. The people who come through the door here at Revel, we depend on them coming through. That's how we make a living and we can stay alive and do these things. So anytime you have to... Ostensibly. We're working on that. Anytime you have to break a relationship, it's a difficult thing to do. And when it's a deep relationship, a very personal one, like a romantic relationship, it's horrendously difficult because especially if you're optimistic, which I am incredibly optimistic, and you're pretty optimistic and give people the benefit of the doubt, you always think it's going to get better. And, maybe it does for some people, but lots of times it doesn't. And at some point you have to make the decision, is this what I want in my life? And if it's not, staying in this relationship is going to ensure that it's going to be in my life. It's not going away. It is not going to change. It hasn't changed after 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 20 years, whatever it is. It hasn't changed. And I don't want it in my life. I'm going this way.
I think, yeah, that's a whole nother topic, is just relationships in general, like romantic relationships in general. But I think at this point, yeah, we can kind of sum up basically everything, which is that, so forgiveness forgiveness is basically just about people's reactions to things that happen to them, or people's reaction to things that other people do that involve you. You know, like
that have an impact on you.
yeah, that have an impact on you, and basically a key to a more serene life, so to speak, is what?
The key, I think the
Key.
key to a serene life, and actually I don't think it's serene. I think it's a loving, kind life.
Just a life
Yeah.
where you don't harbor resentment
Yeah.
towards people. And
Is to really understand that there is a difference between a human being and a human being's acts, and that you can judge an act as something you do not prefer to have in your life, and then deal with that without judging that person as a bad person. That person is just them. Thank you for being yourself. Thank you for showing me who you are so I can make a decision about what to do. Thank you for that. Instead of, can't believe you did this to me. Yeah. So forgiveness is looking at that and giving that person the right to be themselves, and giving yourself the right to be yourself, and making a decision one way or the other. You can judge the acts all you want, but you need to forgive the person for having done whatever it is you think you choose not to have in your life, because it's just them being them.
So basically, just forgiveness is just, it's dropping the personality to it, like
Yes.
the directionalness of the act.
It's taking everything personally.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is the ability to take the personal nature of all acts out of the equation. Judge the act as a bad thing. You are still a human being worthy of love and respect. I may not want to be in a relationship with you because of these acts. I may not want to have this kind of relationship or that kind of relationship with you because of your acts. But you are a human being worthy of love and respect, period. And move on. You know, and so long as you are, that they're, like, okay, well, I could do that with all these people. I can't do it with these people. Then you really haven't got it.
Yeah.
It really has to be for everybody.
Well, I think this is a topic in fact, let's talk about this next week. I want to talk about practice next week.
Okay.
And what practice is.
Yeah, practice is a good one because it applies to everything.
Yeah, but it's basically that. It's practice. And the funny part is we've had so much potential practice at getting good at forgiving things, because there's plenty of things that everybody has had happen that are just like, I don't like this. But we've kind of failed over and over again, and we're not really practicing as we haven't actually tried to do a new thing towards it. Instead, we're just practicing the old behavior over and over again.
Practice makes perfect is not accurate. It's perfect practice makes perfect. So you have to be practicing the good thing or the way that you want to behave in order to get that.
That yes, but also a good way to phrase it is practice makes permanent.
There you go.
Whatever you're practicing, that will be what your
we talked about it in the last podcast about the ruts we're forming.
Yeah.
So if you constantly have an immediate reaction that's, you did this to me, how could you do this to me? Every time something is said, then that's the rut you're grooving in your head, in your brain, in your being. And practice is the perfect solution for that.
They're both P words. All these P words. Permanent practice is perfect. Okay, well, that was good. Thank you for listening or watching, and we'll be back next week with the topic of practice.
Yep. Cool.
Cool. Okay.